Hello to the world and to the kingdom citizens. I greet you in the precious holy name of Yahshua Messiah, Yahshua HaMashiach, who said in his word, John 8:32, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Hi, I'm Dr. John Curry, Ambassador, Pan-African, and welcome to the embassy of the kingdom of heaven on earth. If you want to follow this podcast, please subscribe to JC Global Embassy TV 1, ring the bell, and hit the thumbs up button. Today I have a message for you entitled, Who Civilized Who? Who Civilized Who? I bring you this message because my wife and I, we took a European tour over the last 3.5 weeks. And we went to France, and then from there, we ended up going to Rome, Italy, and from Rome we went to Greece. And we're going to talk about who civilized who and how did the great continent of Africa had a great role to play and a great part in civilizing basically all of Europe. So I want to talk to you first about France. France was a place where we went. We had a great time there. But France, as you probably already know, has some baggage. The baggage that France have is France right now has been trying to basically overturn Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso. They've been trying to get rid of him. It is in my knowledge where they said that he's had more than, I think, between 19 to 20 attempts on his life within the last 2 years. So basically, they're trying to get rid of him. And the reason why they're trying to get rid of him is because he is putting his foot down. He's ran most of those that are part of the France presidential people as far as military. He ran them all out. He closed down the doors so France cannot come back in. And they are literally angry and trying to get rid of him by assassination. But Ibrahim Traoré is the president, and he's president of Burkina Faso. He's only 35 years old, and I'm telling you, he is coming with what he know he need to do. He's the one that has made many sacrifices. He do not drive around in nice cars. He just got a regular Jeep that he ride around. He dresses up in military attire. He is not trying to focus on himself, but he's trying to focus on the people in Burkina Faso. So I want you to understand what's going on in France. France has been dominating Africa with 29 countries, and these 29 countries have been dominated by France. 21 of those countries are known as, they have funds they're called the Francophone. And without Africa, with 29 countries supporting France, the nation of France would literally look like a third world country, And not only am I saying this, but there's many that are saying this as well. In other words, one of the main person that is saying it along with me is Dr. Ariano from ADDI, and she's an ambassador at one time for the United States. So she has been pushing the fact that France has been dominating. So she's very pleased and happy that President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso is doing what he needs to do. And I applaud the president as well. But I want you to know, well, while we was there, we were just driving through, and our guide was telling us on the first day that France basically are dealing with some terrible things in the city. He was telling me that the city basically had a drug problem. It's a very dangerous city. And he told us not to go down to a place called Saint Denis. He said at night the city is loud and a lot of drugs and parking. He said that is not where we want to go. He went on to describe some other things in France, how bad it was. And maybe it's living up to what has been said, that without the continent of Africa, France would be a third world country. But I want to show you some clips of some basically how we enjoyed ourselves. We went to the Olympic Village, and we got a chance to take some photos at the Olympic Village. Even though France is going through a crisis, we still wanted to go to see for ourselves what the city was all about. Also, we have a chance to go to the Eiffel Tower, where we had an opportunity to basically get some pictures and things of that nature at the Eiffel Tower. I think it's important for you to know exactly what we've done for these 3.5 weeks. The other thing that doing that, the Eiffel Tower was built by slaves. The Eiffel Tower was built by slaves, and they put out all of those things, that the work that was done, the architecture was done by a great architecturist. But I want you to understand that France is still got its foot on 29 countries in Africa, in West Africa, 29 countries in West Africa. And I believe for us as a diaspora, we must do our part to try to shut as much of that down as possible by supporting President Ibrahim Traoré. He's the president of Burkina Faso, and we need to keep him in prayer, as well as make sure that we can support the ADDI by supporting the African diaspora throughout the world. The other thing that I want to bring to you as well is that, well, from there we end up going to went to Rome. And while being in Rome, we saw some things that would just kind of take you back to the Apostle Paul. It takes you back to when Rome was going through what Rome was going through. And I want you to just get a little peek at here, this photo here of Rome, the Colosseums of Rome. And I'm going to show you pictures of the actual Colosseums of Rome, and as well as the places that many times the tourists was basically kind of hesitate in taking us to, because the question was being asked, who built these Colosseums? Who built all of these things? And here's another one where it's at the Vatican, just to give you a shot of how things went at the Vatican. We had an opportunity to go into the Vatican. Before we went into the Vatican, as I said before, we was at the Colosseum. We had a chance to be able to see who built the Colosseum. And come to find out, the Colosseum was built by slaves. It was built by slaves, and those slaves were from Africa. They used the slaves to build the Colosseums from Africa, as well as using cobblestones and all of those things. And we had an opportunity to walk on those cobblestones to get to the Colosseum. We also had an opportunity, while walking on cobblestones to get to the Colosseum, we had an opportunity to take a good, clear look at some of the great people that came before the white Romans. We found out that many of the Romans were already black that was in Rome. We looked up a man by the name of September Severus, and September Severus was a black man, and he was an emperor over Rome, and there was many other black emperors over Rome at that time. But they never wanted to give the credit to the Africans that came and made a great influence in the city and the country of Rome. So what they end up doing while on the tour, they're telling us stuff that they want us to know. In essence, they was trying to use eraser, or shall we say, erase the African contribution to France and Rome. And now I want to show you how important it is that when we got to Greece, we had an opportunity to go to Greece, and here's some pictures of my wife and I while we're in Greece. Had a chance to ask some questions, and while asking those questions, many people was like, why are you asking these questions? And these are some of the houses that was built on the slope of the mountains, that some of these houses were built by Africans while being used as slaves. Another thing I want you to understand is that Greece had a great relationship with ancient Kemet. A great relationship with ancient Kemet, but those relationships, while being over in Greece, while being over in France, The tour guides did not talk much about them. It's like they was trying to hide the African contribution for history. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted to let you in on this, so you can see pictures and so you can get an understanding of what really happened during the ancient times. During the ancient times in Greece, Greece would admit that African played a great role in them becoming civilized. Remember, the question is, who civilized who? Well, it was ancient African Kemet civilized, and which now is called Egyptian, civilized the Greece. The Greeks civilized Rome. The Romans civilized France, Spain, and all of Western Europe. So the question is, how did France, Spain, and Rome and all of Western Europe became civilized? They became civilized through ancient Kemet/Egyptian, and their handprints are still on what they did for thousands and thousands of years. So here's what I want you to understand: who civilized who? The Greeks visit ancient Kemet/Egypt as students. In other words, they had no knowledge of civilization. They visit ancient Kemet and Egyptian as students to learn about the Africans. They came with no knowledge. Underline that. They came with no knowledge. They came to Africa to gain knowledge. It was Plato, studied in Egypt/Kemet for 13 years. In other words, when they went to the University of Timbuktu in Mali, when they got there, Sankore and Mali, when they got there, they knew that they had no knowledge, so they went to the University of Timbuktu to study and to learn. Plato stayed there for 13 years, but in order to get a degree from the University of Timbuktu, Sankore, they had to be at the university for more than 20 years. So it was Pythagoras who studied philosophy, Pythagoras who studied chemistry and medicine, all in ancient Kemet/Egypt. He studied there for more than 22 years. It was Thales, who the first Greek philosopher to study in Egypt/Kemet for 7 years. In essence, they all believed that they had no knowledge unless they were sitting at the knee of ancient Kemet/Egyptian to learn what the Egyptians learned. They was completely ignorant of knowledge until they came to ancient Kemet and Egyptian to learn. So Pythagoras was the first Greek philosopher to study at the University of Timbuktu, the University of Timbuktu for 7 years. It was Hippocrates who called the father of medicine. This is what Hippocrates said. He called the father of medicine. He was called the father of medicine. But he come to understand and recognize that the Egyptian, the multi-genius Imhotep, as the father of medicine. He had to defer to the Egyptian Imhotep, father of medicine. Imhotep was the father of medicines long before Hippocrates came on the scene. He was father of medicine. Imhotep was known as the medicine god. And I was honored to be able to walk the soils and walk the ground, foot on soil, where Imhotep probably walked. It was important to me to go there. The next one was Pythagorean theorem. It's called the Pythagorean theorem. This was used to build the pyramids in Egypt. And while building pyramids, Pythagoras, this happened thousands of years before Pythagoras was even born. So the question is, who civilized who? It is obvious that the Africans on the continent civilized the world. Plato also told his students. Plato told his students to go to ancient Kemet, or the Egyptians, if they wanted to study the minds of great philosophers. And great philosophers at that time was in the ancient cities of Kemet and Egyptians, and many of the Africans around the continent was coming to the University of Timbuktu to talk about philosophy, to study philosophy, what is and what is not. The isness of a thing versus what the thing is, the stuffness of a thing, how a thing is normally applied to life. What is that thing? How does that thing work? They was teaching all of these other European nations when they came to understand what makes life and how does life make culture. And as they was learning that, these particular white people that was coming, these Europeans that was coming over to Africa, began to educate themselves. They learned how to build columns. They learned how to do sculptures. They learned how to do particular paintings. They learned all of that stuff before, when they went back to Europe, when they went back, all of those things was already in place because of the Africans that had went around the world 20 years long before the Europeans came out of caves. So I want you to understand who you are as a black person. I want you to understand who you are as a Caucasoid, a Negroid, or a Mongoloid, to understand that there's a hierarchy in the things that took place long before the Europeans came to be. Plato, as I told you, told his students to go to Egypt, told them to go to ancient Kemet if they wanted to study the mind. But more importantly, it was Herodotus, a Greek historian, described ancient Africa, ancient Kemet, ancient Egyptian as the cradle of world civilization. It was him, a Caucasoid, a European historian, that finally came and said, he described ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, as the cradle of world civilization. Our ancestors was very inviting. Our ancestors was very caring. Our ancestors invited them to the table. But when they came in, they turned on our ancestors and then tried to make them as slaves. So I want you to understand, our trip to Europe, a 3-nation tour to Europe, gained a whole lot of information. And I want you to know, you Africans who happen to live in the diaspora, you are a great people. You've heard me say it many times, that we are the most brilliant. We are the most excellent. We are the most resilient. And we are the most creative. When you understand we're the most brilliant, we're the most excellent, we are the most creative, and we are the most resilient, then you can stand on both of your feet and you can know in your heart of heart that God has given us everything that we need. We'll never should have to hold our head down. Our head needs to be up. And while walking through France, and while walking through Rome, and while walking through Greece, all the Africans that I saw was walking with their head down because they did not want to look the white Europeans in the eye. They did not. They wanted to be kind of dismissive. They want to play a docile role. But everywhere my wife and I walked, our head was up. And there was white men that would look at me hoping that I was nodding my head. But no, I did nod my head. They end up nodding their head. Why? Because they love us when we're docile. They love us when we won't speak up. But when we speak up and talk to them face to face, eye to eye, they have a tendency to feel threatened. So I want you to know, you Africans all over the diaspora, from America to China, from China to Russia, wherever you are somebody. God has created you to dominate, created you to rule, but also created you, more importantly, to love each other. You must have a Pan-African mindset. Wherever you see black, you want to uplift. Wherever you see black, you want to encourage. Wherever you see black, you want to be able to help them, to help us love one another, as the Word of God tells us. Love our neighbor as we love ourselves. I hope you can believe it. I hope you can receive it. It was a great trip going to France, Rome, and Greece, because what it did for me, it gave me even more evidence that my black historian friends, such as men like Dr. John Henry Clark, Stoudemire, and all of these black historians have been right from day one. And all I'm doing is just carrying the torch to bring you more of the truth. Why? Because ye shall know the truth, and the truth that you know will make you free. God bless you. God keep you. Until next time, God bless.